Hello again. Now you'll know from previous videos that I've been slowly but surely creating a large art piece called the May Parade, which has got lots of sort of archetypes, figures loosely based on real characters from British folk events. None of them are based on an actual real character, but they all bear a slight resemblance to one that really actually exists, you know, such as this one here, Penbronze, looks a bit like the Mary Lloyd of Wales, or the Penwith Osses down in Cornwall, and this one here looks a little bit like the Dorset Ooser. But none of them are based on actual figures, they're just sort of inspired by them. Well, it's been a while since I made a new one. It's about time I did. My basic idea is to have someone here, probably with a really tall hat. I like the idea of making this figure really tall. You know, they're going to be walking along like this. Not quite sure of the outfit yet. I think what I might do is have something that's got a bit of a sort of jacket feel to it, but then of course you've got the incredibly long legs here, inside trousers, and with his feet sticking out the bottom here, and I think probably maybe a tailcoat, so there's a kind of tailcoat behind. Well, that's the basic idea of it anyway, and quite what he's going to be doing with his hands yet, or what activity he's involved in, not sure. But that's the basic idea. So I've started with a pair of chopsticks, old disposable throwaway chopsticks that I've had in the drawer for a long time. I've attached that to a little piece of cardboard roll that came from the inside of a roll of tin foil, aluminium foil. Here we are, this is the other bit of the roll. I've attached a bit of that to actually sort of create a bit of a bottom there. And then I've wound some wire around into a basic shape of the body and then padded it out with foil. In fact, the very foil I took off that roll. So the figure is starting to come together. I'm now starting to bulk the body out. Now, polymer clay is really expensive. So what I'm doing is I'm bulking out the main body of the form with a much cheaper air drying paper clay. This will take about 24 hours to properly dry out, but once it does, I'll be able to put the polymer clay on top of this, and I'll use a lot less. So the clay on our body is now cured. This is nice and hard and solid. The next thing I have to think about is how I'm going to mount this to a base. So he's got to stand on here somehow. So I think the obvious thing to do is to drill a hole just slightly smaller diameter than the bottom of the leg, and then push it in there and seal it up with some wood glue. And then maybe take a little bit off the edge of this leg, the end of this leg, so the legs match up in length, if you know what I mean. I have my hole, and I've cut the end off one of the legs, so it's shorter than the other. So now when this is mounted into here like this, just got to find the right balancing point, and that will all be good. All right, let's glue it into place. So he's now freestanding. We can start putting some meat on the bones. So I've sculpted the trousers in polymer clay and wrapped them around the sticks, and I've given that a bake. So this is now rock hard. Do you know what? One of the things about creating artworks without any clear plan to start with is that they tend to change and mutate over time, and you suddenly find yourself going off in a slightly different direction or a tangent halfway through the build. And that's what's happened with this figure, because I baked the bottom half of the body and was quite pleased with it, and it's kind of pear-shaped. It's got quite a big backside, and I was going to put a big beer belly on it and a sort of top coat with tails over the top. And then the more I looked at it, the more it reminded me of the shape of the chickens in Aardman's two chicken run films. Now, Aardman, I'm a massive fan of the Aardman films. I think their animations are extraordinary. I mean, they deserve all the Oscars they've won. And I looked at this shape, and I remembered those chickens, and then I started thinking about some of the events I've been to around the country where they have characters dressed as birds. I mean, the one I particularly thought of is Old Ned, who's a crow costume, and he walks along the promenade in Penzance, down in my native Cornwall, on May Day as people blow the May horns and bring in the May. And I thought maybe I should do a big bird figure. But it was only when I was about halfway through creating the top half of the figure that I started to realise how much work I've made for myself, having to make all the individual feathers. Oh my word. So each feather starts as a small, I suppose, teardrop shaped piece of polymer clay, which I then flatten out, and then I actually push into place on the figure where I want it, smush the end in like that, and then I have to make the feather shape itself. And the way that's done is by doing a central line up through the middle and then pressing indentations either side of that central line, like so, and then cutting in a few a little bit deeper just to add some sort of slightly raggy edges. And the reason I do that is not only to bond the clay to the clay below, but also just to add a touch of realism, really. And that's it. I've just got to cover the whole body like that. What was I thinking? I'm now starting the head, which meant scrunching up some tin foil and putting it on top of a stick, and I've just given it a very thin covering of polymer clay. I'm now going to squeeze this into the right head shape, and then we'll start adding some details. I think I've got the head about where I want it now, so I'm going to bake that. And as you can see, baking it makes it nice and hard. Right, I've covered the main part of the body in feathers, and I've baked it. Hello you. So it's had a second bake now. So the trousers part has been baked twice, and the upper body has been baked once. And that's the joy about cosplay and polymer clay. You can just keep baking and baking it as long as you don't overheat it. The other thing I've done is I've made some detachable wing armatures, which are all going to be covered in feathers as well, plus his hands are going to go on there. What I've also done now is I've sculpted some feathers for the headdress, and the reason they're slightly different colour is because there's two that are quite rigid. They're the ones here that are done in polymer clay, and there's two I've made in cos clay because these will be slightly more flexible. I'm going to try those on the headdress. If they work okay, then I will make the tail in the same way but make them longer, but I'll do those in cos clay because that's softer and more flexible. Righty-ho, here's where we are. The head is attached. The straps around his arms that will be attached to the wings are in place. He's got his feathers all over his body. Yeah, just got to make some wings now and attach them, but otherwise he's looking pretty good. And the way he stands is quite nice because it's got a sort of flamingo like sticking forward, and time I add all these feathers to his backside it's going to look pretty funny. I think, yeah, I decided these are going to be for the backside now. I'm not going to use these for the hat. I think they'll be much funnier sticking out of his bum. Okay, I've now done quite a bit more work. So going up to the trousers, up to the top, you can see all the feathers on the shirt. And as you can see, I've created a mask, like a flying mask, with goggles and a long beak. I've added some hands. I've also decided to put those feathers I made on the tail and made a completely different headpiece. Yep, this is nothing like my original design was going to be, but there you go. The other thing I've done is I've made some wings. Now these are made from just ordinary foam and cardboard, but when they're painted they'll look fine because they'll merge with this figure, and they'll be mounted like this on the final sculpture. So final bake, stick the wings on and we can do some painting. And the wings are on. This is without doubt the weirdest figure I've done so far for this May Parade project, and will I ever do a weirder one? I'm not so sure. It's a bit of an odyssey, this one, isn't it, eh? Right, it's painting time. So now the black primer's gone on, he's all completely covered in black paint. All I've got to do now is dust him with gold to make it look like bronze, and he can join the parade. Well, in the end, I ended up with something quite different from my original plan, but you know what? I'm not unhappy. So, let's have a look at the glamour shots. Welcome to the May Parade. So there you go, another character completed for the May Parade project. How big will the project get? I don't know. Every so often I just get inspired to make a new figure and I just make it, and it could go on forever. It could be an endless parade, but no, it probably won't be. Oh, in case you're wondering about the name, Brian Clough, it's a pun, and British people are probably more likely to get it. Firstly, the word chough. The chough is a bird. It's a species of crow. It's a corvid. Very distinctive from things like ravens and rooks and carrion crows, and the fact that it's got bright red legs and a long curving red bill, which inspired the shape of the bill on this character. And the chough is also the national bird of Cornwall, where I come from. As for the name Brian Clough, well, there used to be an England football manager. Now, obviously, we're talking soccer football here. There used to be an England football manager called Brian Clough, and he was a major personality, particularly of the 1970s and 80s, because he was a very mouthy, opinionated, and very funny man. You know, so he was a favourite on talk shows and interviews and things like that. So everyone knew who Brian Clough, or Cloughy, was. So this is Brian Clough. Anyway, that's it for another artsy project. I'll be back with something else soon, no doubt. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Don't forget, hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Toodle pip. If you've enjoyed this video, then please consider subscribing. Or click on some of these links to look at some of the other videos on the channel. Or press the like button. Or leave a comment. It would be lovely to hear from you. Any combination of those four things would be wonderful. Thank you very much.